Hey everybody.
Hello, this is Castor family reporting in. We're going out to briefly share our story and what happened this last weekend. So our family was part of a group of a few families that all gathered. We met in Michigan to talk about our fight against pediatric cancer, and we met two other families up there that have little ones that have also been battling cancer, and we've all been kind of doing it together from different spots in the country and trying things and sharing stories and coming up with solutions. And so we took off and went up to Michigan and was interviewed, and the interview has been all chopped up and all the stuff was cut out, and we didn't get to share any of our story. Didn't make it into the news for Ben and his battle against the brain tumor, the bad guy as he calls it. So Kimmy's asked us, because of all her wonderful, adoring fans have requested to hear Ben's story. So we'll just dive in and go through it. So Benjamin's our youngest of three. We found an astrocytoma when he was 17 months old, and at 18 months he had his first tumor resection. Pathology report came back about 5 days after and said that there was no cancer and that it was actually a
Cortical dysplasia.
Yeah, cortical dysplasia, which is essentially like a deformity in the brain. Life went on. We dealt with a lot of fallout from the first surgery, a lot of behavioral issues, a lot of things that we won't go into right now. But we moved on with life. We relocated, and in 2020 we started to work on following up with another MRI just to make sure that everything still looked good. A little something happened in 2020. You might remember it. It was called COVID. We couldn't get him in, couldn't get an appointment scheduled to come in, but he was showing no signs of any issues, and besides, it wasn't cancer, right? So we didn't push as hard as we should have. And in 21, he was scheduled finally to go in and start with an EEG, and we were going to go from there. And when we went back in, or the week we were supposed to go back in, he woke up and was walking funny on a Monday, and that led us to the emergency room. That same week we were supposed to be getting just a checkup. We ended up in and found out that there was cancer, and it had grown and spread into his brainstem.
So the first biopsy was wrong. They told us it was incorrect. They told us he did not have cancer, and we were living our lives thinking we had a cancer-free child.
So the second time with it, we're told that it's in his brainstem and that they need to go in right away. There's not much that I can remember specific to that weekend that led to the second surgery. One thing I do remember, we had gotten Ben off of seizure medication after the first surgery by using full spectrum hemp oil, or some people might know it as CBD. So we'd been introduced to the cannabis plant at that point, and we saw amazing things with it there. But we never really dug in any deeper or dove in. And so when we got told the second time, one of the things I do specifically remember is I said, do we have to do a surgery right now? I know that they're doing some really amazing things with cannabis. Specifically the hemp plant is what I was familiar with.
We told them he was on hemp oil, and we were very holistic. We wanted to treat everything holistically. You okay?
Yeah, I'm just cold.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Shivering a little bit.
He's shivering over here. Do you want to go inside?
No, we're
okay. They told us, we were like, we did not want to do a second surgery. He had lots of behavioral issues from his first surgery. And I mean, who wants to let doctors cut open their kid again? And we were very hesitant, but they were assuring us that there was no other treatment. They said, we need to get the tumor out. It's bringing weakness to his right side. He wasn't really using his arm. He was like latching his leg, but he was still running around. He was still dancing. He was still singing. He still had full use of his right hand and his left hand. He wasn't having seizures. So that's where we're at.
That's where we're at. So we went in 5 days after finding it the second time, and they did another tumor resection. It was 11, 12 hours worth of a surgery, something along those lines. And this time when Ben woke up, he was unable to move the right side of his body. And at the time we were told that they had lost the right side during the surgery, but they got it back, and they were going to do another MRI the next morning to see what was going on. And so we got through that night, which was
horrific.
It was
all night of them waking him up. Why don't you go get a blanket?
I'm okay.
You're shivering a lot. Okay, go get a blanket. It was horrific. It was all night of them poking him and prodding him and asking him to wake up, and he just slept. He was so tired. And they were saying, hey, Ben, can you feel this? Can you feel that? And I remember at one point, it was probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that panic started to set in for me, because after the first brain surgery, he was physically fine, but they were leading on to the fact that something was wrong because he was not responding to touch. And I'm trying to get us both on the screen. And they told me at that time, because he wasn't moving any part of his right side, that if he doesn't start moving anything on that right side in a couple hours, we're going to have to get him in for an earlier MRI to see if we cut a nerve. And that's about when I almost had a panic attack and was like, did you guys paralyze my kid? Obviously that wasn't the plan. Obviously it was, let's get in as much as we can get to relieve the pressure and bring the right side, bring the weakness, get the weakness better on the right side. That was it. We were not warned we weren't warned this could happen. We weren't warned of any of this. So it was a huge surprise, because they were pretty confident that they were going to succeed in this mission and help our child. That walked into the hospital, danced in the hospital, the waiting room. We sang and now he's a vegetable within 10 hours after the surgery. You want to continue?
Yeah, so we went from there to another hospital where he spent the next 4 weeks. And essentially they told us the next morning, after surgery too, that he had a mini stroke. And of course, this is when we started hearing about how resilient kids are. If I've heard any term through the last 4 to 7 years from going back to the first surgery, it was how resilient children are.
Yep.
So we spent 9 days in the hospital after the second surgery, and then we were shipped off to an inpatient therapy place, and he spent the next 4 weeks there.
Yeah. He could not walk.
Yeah.
He could swallow, thank God, and he could talk, but after the surgery, half of his eyesight was gone, and he could not move the right side of his body.
Which we didn't find out about the eyesight. That was another blindsiding.
We were not warned he could lose his eyesight. The surgery did that, not the tumor. The surgery, the treatment they recommended.
So we, when we checked in for the inpatient therapy, Stephanie just went crazy seeking knowledge, and she read one book after another. She would be there for Mondays and Tuesdays, and then I would come and relieve her Wednesday night, and then she'd come back Thursday and Friday, and then I'd spend the weekend at the hospital. And that went on for about 4 weeks, and Steph just started burning through books. And before we left the inpatient place, we had found our starting point at trying to heal Ben, and that was through a plant-based diet program. And we're not talking being vegan. We're not talking about just cutting out animal product. We went as far as you can possibly go, to the point where Stephanie was making our own ketchup. She was making our own vegan ranch dip. She made everything by hand from scratch. And while he was still in the rehab center, she was actually starting to bring food in. We stopped eating the hospital food, to the point where a nutritionist came in and sat with us and said that they were concerned that Ben wasn't eating enough. And
they were trying to lecture us on how to feed him. Like, it was ridiculous.
So anyway, so plant-based diet, that's where we started. So we came out of the inpatient surgery, or I'm sorry, the inpatient therapy, and Ben...
Well, he was in inpatient for 7 weeks, learning... Huh?
Oh,
it was 7 to 8 weeks.
Oh, okay.
He had to learn how to walk again. He had to learn how to move his arm again. He had to learn how to balance again. His speech has been affected, so he essentially had to learn how to use his tongue again, and he has had to learn how to swallow his spit again. Like, he still drools to this day, and he's sometimes at a playground, and I hear kids say, "Hey, that kid's drooling." That is from the surgery, not from the tumor. My kid didn't have any of these problems before the surgery. That was the standard treatment that they recommended.
Well, and it was the only options given, and even to the point where we knew just enough about CBD and hemp to bring that up, but
it's about all we knew.
And then get told no, that isn't an option.
Yeah, there was no other option than surgery at that time, and then chemo afterwards. That's what they were giving us.
So we're working to rehabilitate Ben. We're working on that, and then we're battling cancer. And this is summer of 2021. We started the plant-based diet. They wanted to start chemo because there was still a large amount of mass that was pasted to his brainstem. And then on top of all that, it was a polycystic tumor, so it was growing a very large cyst off of it in his brain, and then it was also growing a cyst in his brain stem. And we did not want to do the chemo. Ben has always been extremely sensitive to any pill, any medication we've ever given him, to the point like antibiotics will make him into a different person. You can look at a list of side effects and check almost every one of them off if Ben takes it. So the idea of putting chemo in him was, it was no way, no how. We couldn't do it, but we wanted to attack it with the plants, and that's where we started. But the tumor didn't really seem to grow very much right after the second surgery, but the cyst continued to balloon up, and now his eye was starting to go lazy right in front of us. And so the next recommendation was...
No, his head tilt. He started walking like this.
Yeah, his head was tilted to the side, his eyes going to the side. And our neurosurgeon says, we need to go put an Omira in his brain.
They recommended at that time, so 6 months later, no, 4 months later, 6 months?
It was about 6 months after the second surgery.
They said that we're at the point where we need to start chemo. And before we start chemo, we need to shrink and drain the cyst. And that can only happen with surgery.
So now we're looking at a third surgery.
Now they're recommending a third surgery. And I said absolutely not. Jesse was a little torn. So we met with the neurosurgeon and we were chatting about it, and he recommended the third surgery as soon as possible, and to drain the cyst and to start chemo right away, and to also put in an Omira into his brain, because he told us the cyst, he will drain the cyst, but it's going to keep on filling because that's what the tumor's doing. So it's going to keep on filling, and instead of having to open his skull up every time, that he would just drain the cyst from the straw in his brain. That's what they were recommending. And I looked at the neurosurgeon and I said, I don't feel comfortable with you cutting into him again. He has lost half of his eyesight from the surgery that you performed 5 months ago, and he's lost function to half of his body. There has to be another way. There has to be something. I would try chemo first. And he told me that chemo would not work on this. Mm-hmm. He said the chemo that Bennett's going to start, and in fact, he really didn't give any other chemo options, but he said he's never seen a cyst shrink by just using chemo. And it was large enough that we needed to drain it. And I said, we're not doing it. And we're going to try at least the chemo first. And that's around the time that I was on Facebook and I wasn't sleeping and I was searching through Facebook. I'm on Facebook for cancer families, honestly. It's a very lonely world. And for me personally, I feel picked on. I feel like the world has just been unfair to our family and to my child. And it's nice to connect with other people going through the same thing. So I was on Facebook and I was looking at some post from another family that I follow, a cancer family, and I think they had a bad scan. And I went through the comments because I was going to comment something like, I'm so sorry, we're on the same page. And somebody commented, look at Pray for Gray's page. And so I'm a research junkie. I will click on anything. I will click on clickbait any day, all day long, if I found something to help my kid.
Something worthwhile.
Something worthwhile, of course. But so I went to Gray's page, and Kimmy, it was around December, and Kimmy had just shared her scan about Grayson's scan. And it was like a 50 or 60% reduction, and she was so excited about it. And there was one sentence that really stuck out to me on Gray's page, and it was, we can use Western medicine and pharmaceuticals with holistic and natural, because I'm doing it and it's working. You don't have to choose one or the other. And so I PM'd her and I said, I would love to know what you're doing, and I just kind of shared our story very briefly. And I said, I need help. Maybe we can brainstorm. Let's share, let's share our battle stories. And then she let me know that Grayson was taking full extract cannabis oil and to contact Hillary from Old School Farms. And so that's what I did. And Hillary responded immediately to me. I texted her. She probably called me within 5 minutes. Like she just had her phone ready for my text. And we chatted, and we were able to get the medicine from her. And we started him on the full extract cannabis oil almost at the exact same time we started the chemo.
So what happens next is where the story finally takes a turn and gets amazing. And looking, as we've gone back through it this last week and looked at the pictures, in the first 2 months of being on the cannabis oil, Ben's eye started to straighten back out, and his head stopped tilting. And we went back in for a scan after only a couple of months of doing the FECO in combination with the chemo, and the cyst had shrunk almost, half the size was what it was?
It was probably about 30%, which was really amazing at that time because it was growing rapidly. It was almost at 5 centimeters, and nothing was stopping it. And we were told when we started the chemo that we would have a 1/3 chance of seeing any reduction. Yeah. And the best that we could hope for the tumor part was stability. That's what we were looking for. And they told us that do not be surprised if that cyst is still there. And I remember the neurosurgeon looking at me that November before we started everything. I'm going to see you back here in my office. This has to be addressed, but you can try this if you want to.
Yeah. So Ben continued on the chemo at the same time as the cannabis for 1 year. Essentially, he was on chemo for 1 year.
It was about 9 months. We started talking about removing it with the doctors.
So at 9 months we're talking about, but he was on it for a year,
Yeah.
and we continued to see the cyst shrink, and we saw the smaller cyst in his brainstem disappear.
It disappeared.
It was gone. And then the mass, the actual tumor that was pasted to his brainstem, was shrinking, and it was shrinking quick. And you got to remember that this is what we were told about starting the chemo is he's going to be on this. You're not going to see any change for 9 months.
Because it's a building chemo.
Yeah. And
it has to build in your system.
At best, what we're hoping is for this to stop growing. But he could be on chemo up to 3 to 5 years to just keep it at bay. And then some reason, beyond our own understanding, when kids hit their puberty years, these tumors will stop growing on their own. And that's what we were led to expect, going into starting a chemo treatment. So we're seeing shrinkage happening. It was awesome. And then at about that same time, Stephanie met another family through Facebook that was on the same inhibitor, on the same type of chemo, and they were having some really bad side effects, and that's to say, the whole time we kept Ben on a plant-based diet and we were doing FICO with the chemo and we were doing those all together, Ben barely had side effects on chemo. I mean, this is a kid that couldn't take an antibiotic without having side effects. And his hair turned white, and that was about it.
That's it.
While other kids were having many, many, many more problems, Ben did not.
Nosebleeds, rashes, ingrown toenails. Ben didn't have any of that.
Nope. But because of what we saw with some of the side effects and the success we were having and what we believed, from the FICO, from the cannabis oil, we decided to, let me take it. We decided that we'd go ahead and pull him off of the chemo, and our oncology team was supportive. And they said, absolutely, if that's what you feel you need to do. When we had started it, they said we could be on it 3 to 5 years, but they planned on him being on it for 2 years, for sure. So we stopped it at the year mark. And then again, at that time, we were told, hey, expect a resurgence. Typically, when they come off of the drug, if there's been shrinkage, it'll flare back up and it'll start growing again. And that did not happen. It sat the way that it was, and it was minimally shrinking on the plant-based diet and the FICO for about 6 months or so.
But the most amazing thing is it did not grow.
It didn't grow.
They told us that they would be really surprised if it didn't grow, and it didn't. And in fact, I'm jumping ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So at the same time that he came off the chemo, Stephanie had also, in her continued research, learned some really interesting information about garlic. And if you chop and aerate fresh garlic for 15 minutes, it releases an enzyme
called allicin.
And she nerds out about it. I don't know the names of these things. I just talk about them like I do know. But it releases this enzyme that's been shown to attack glios, which that's the type of cancer makeup that the tumor was. So we started that when he came off the chemo. He's still on FICO. He's still doing the plant-based diet. And then in the summer of, I guess it would have been 23, I met a man while I was doing some fundraising, because we're still dealing with trying to get the right side of his body back.
Yeah, he's still not right. He's still not using, by this time, his knee latches. He has foot drop. Oh, I forgot to mention, he also has foot drop. He can't use his right hand. He's having seizures.
Yeah, seizures.
And he lost half of his eyesight due to the surgery. Just the surgery. This was not the tumor. It was the treatment.
So we're trying to raise money to get him to Texas so that we can do this functional neurology, which isn't covered by insurance, and it's extremely expensive. And that was not to do with the cancer. That was about getting that right side of his body back and getting the seizures to stop. And I meet a guy while I'm doing this fundraising, and he's a beekeeper. And he says, I got to tell you something. And he went on to tell me a story about his dad had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and they gave him 6 months to live. And this beekeeper started giving him something that's out of the beehive. It's called propolis. And he said, you know, that was 14 years ago and my dad's still alive. And of course that catches my ear, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, well, so explain this to me. So he breaks down what propolis is, and we'll let you all do your own research. But the long and the short of it, we started giving him some of this propolis twice a day when we gave him the chopped up garlic. So Ben literally will eat 1 clove of garlic that's chopped with 1 pinch of propolis, and we mix it in applesauce, and he takes it twice a day, and we call that his natural chemo.
Along with the cannabis.
And then we've, since then, with all the success, we've kind of laxed back on the plant-based diet. But he started that in June of 23, the propolis, garlic, stayed on the FICO, and by the time we got to January of 24, the tumor was gone. And
there's a small like little part left that the oncologist is saying it's scar tissue, or the tumor's birthmark. But in the cyst, the cyst is still there a little bit. It went from about 40 millimeters to 16. And that's remained stable. But the tumor continued to wither up and die after stopping the chemo. And it was the exact opposite of what we were told was going to happen. We were told that kids who get off this chemo, they first recommend 2 years. He wasn't on 2 years. He was on about 9 to 10. I really think it was about 9 to 10 months. We were chatting about it. But he was on it for 9 to 10 months. We stopped. They said, it's going to grow back. It didn't. They told us the cyst would not shrink. It did. And I truly believe it's all because of the full extract cannabis oil that we get from this amazing farmer in Maine. So there's our story. And Ben, like for 2 years now, he hasn't had any pharmaceuticals. And
outside of all the seizure medicine he takes.
Plus, so we wanted to just share our story since, you know, the news station refused to. And we have our own page and we have social media. We don't need them. So that's our story. Thank you, Kimmy, for sharing your story so that we can share ours. Thank you for being brave enough to lay all out there to help us save our child. Thank you, Hillary, for donating all that medicine to Ben so we could help save him. And shame on the news station. Shame on anybody that stops this wonderful plant from being distributed to cancer fighting families. Shame. It's got to change. And we're putting our necks out there with Kimmy to change the narrative. There's kids, I think I read that it's like, what, 1 child out of 200 like are being diagnosed with cancer, like, you know, daily. I mean, don't quote me on those stats, but it's a lot. It's a problem, and it's not rare. And these injuries that our kids have are not rare, and they shouldn't be shrugged off. And Ben, yes, Ben is resilient, and he's brave, and so is Grayson. But they carry scars they should not have, and they should have been protected. They should have been protected by not just, like, you know, the doctors in the hospital, but the community, the government, our country, and they're not being protected at all.
That's our ploy, guys. We need help. We need help getting this story out there to as many people as we can. There is the first 3, Maddie, Ben, Grayson, put in whatever order you want. Time of events, Grayson, Ben, Maddie, doesn't make a difference. We have 3 amazing, beautiful children that have been put through some of the worst that life's got to deal, and that will carry scars that they're going to have to fight through for the rest of their lives. And there's no way to go back and tell if we had done it different, if it would have been any different, but we weren't given the choice. The options, Google it right now. Look it up on Google. What are the treatment options for brain cancer or brain tumors? And you will see it is surgery, it is chemo, it is radiation. And this weekend, we just had 3 children together that all, take your pick, each one of them has a problem from one of those 3 options. And we need to get this out. People need to have the option to treat their children naturally.
How they want to be treated.
Homeopathically, to do it safely. At least try it first. I mean, why put them through the surgery and the chemo and the radiation, and if everything else doesn't work there, then we'll go ahead and try plants. I mean, why we're doing it backwards. We're doing it backwards. Try the plants first. God put them on this earth for us, for our bodies. We need the stuff that's in them. And we need to help these other little kids out there, these beautiful little children. Right now, today, I guarantee you somebody had surgery. Some little kid had surgery, and their families are going to be affected for the rest of their lives because of it. Or some little kid out there is getting radiation right now, and maybe he didn't need to, or she didn't need to. It's happening everywhere. And these children, they get no choices in it. They're too small. Us parents, we got to make the call. And we're not given all the information. We're not given all the options. We don't have choices. It's, here's what you have to do with your child. And then heck, if you don't do that, they can come take your kid away from you. Which we did not face that as a family, and we're very grateful we didn't. But there's a world of people out there, and
they're being told no. You can't try that.
It's wrong. It's wrong, and it's got to stop.
We need to protect the kids. And Kimmy and I, along with Julie and Ron, Maddie's parents, we're standing up and we're shouting, this is not right. Our kids are permanently injured. Ben has seizures every day. Every day is a constant reminder of what we allowed people to do to him that we trusted.
And if you're out there and you've had success battling cancer homeopathically with cannabis, or you're out there and you've been injured while trying to battle cancer, please get involved. Jump in with us. There's power in numbers, and unfortunately, as sad as it is to say, there's a lot more of us out there than what people realize.
We love you guys. We just wanted to share what the news station refused to do. And that's our story. Share it. Share it for Ben. Don't do it for us. Share it for Ben. Share it for Maddie. Share it for Grayson. Share it for our kids. You may save a life. You may help a parent decide on a different treatment that's better for them and prevent unnecessary suffering. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.